Do the podcast.
Bum, 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 bum.
Okay, here we are.
Welcome back to
It's the
I'm
big one.
trying to think of
bro.
like a line from the film. But I can't think of it.
I found this podcast to be. I'm gonna save that for the end. We're not gonna say it. We're not gonna say it. We're gonna save it for the end.
We're rolling, right?
Well, yeah, of course we're rolling.
Are we rolling?
All right, the bit's old.
Oh no, there's 3 hours and 30 minutes worth of this.
Yeah.
Strap in, folks.
I hope y'all are ready for our 4-hour podcast about
Yeah.
the 3.5-hour 70mm VistaVision film, The Brutalist.
Well, that's pretty much the intro.
Yeah. We just saw the Brutalist
Yeah.
by Brady Corbet.
1 week removed
It's being touted as the new American epic
by Brady Corbet.
by Brady Corbet.
Brady Corbet.
Corbet.
That's
Corbet, sorry.
Brady
Oh.
Corbet to you.
Excuse me. My apologies to Brady and his camp.
Yeah. He's got Adrian Brody, Guy Pearce, Joe Alwyn.
I forgot that he was in Kinds of Kindness. I was like, where have I seen him before?
Yeah.
And
Felicity
then
Jones.
Felicity Jones, and the girl who plays the niece. She was in White Noise and Sacred Deer, but I don't remember her name.
She's in Tomorrowland.
Yes.
I love that movie.
I
went to go
love
see
Tomorrowland.
Tomorrowland in
That is
theaters.
Brad Bird's second best movie behind Incredibles.
Oh.
I said it.
Wait, Jacob, go ahead and talk.
Bum, 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 bum.
Okay, you're just assigned to mine.
Okay.
We're good.
All right.
Going back to Tomorrowland, I think it's easily Brad Bird's second best.
Have you
Yeah.
heard about the rat
Right.
in the hat?
Because Incredibles 2's one, and then Tomorrowland, and then...
And then Ratatouille. Or no, and then the Iron Giant, then Ratatouille.
No.
then Incredibles.
Tomorrowland is better than Ratatouille and the Iron Giant.
Nothing's better than Ratatouille. I think we need to get that. We need to clear that up.
The Brutalist is.
I'm gonna be so for real now. I'm taking Ratatouille over the Brutalist, maybe.
Yeah, I am.
No,
I'm
I
definitely
honestly
picking
would too.
Ratatouille.
I seriously, honestly would.
Okay. You know we've joked enough. Let's talk about it.
This movie, man.
I don't know where to start.
It's a
bro.
monumental undertaking. First of all, I think we need to tip our cap to the achievement that it is, as far as like scale, and especially working within its budget, what it was able to produce.
Despite us kind of memeing on it a little bit, it is, shot in VistaVision, 70
And
millimeter.
I'll say it's one of the best looking movies of the century.
And you all did see it
In 35.
You all
We saw it in 35.
correct?
35,
You didn't
yeah.
see it in 70?
No, not in 70.
No.
But
Dang.
yeah.
Sucks to suck, but no.
Yeah. I will say a lot of this movie looks great. I think, and I might get into this in a little bit, but and Corbet himself has acknowledged this, but the inconsistencies in aesthetic approaches kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I know he says, well, the first act is minimalism and the second act is maximalism. I still want there to be a relatively homogeneous look to how the film is shot and how things are approached. But I'm willing to hear
that
it out.
didn't bother me. I will say other things bothered me, and I will say I'll throw my 2 cents in. I do think that this is a special movie. I think that it's forget about all the A24 promotional stuff. Like it's the next Godfather. We're not even going to go there because it's not. Obviously, but I do think that these are the movies that we beg for. These are the movies that we say, please make them today. That doesn't mean that they're perfect. That doesn't mean they have to be perfect. It's a special movie. It is.
I agree. I do.
Now that being said, this is far from a perfect movie.
Yeah. I have to. I should go on record and say, I was so excited to see this. The lead up to it, especially the trailer, and just granted, I think they maybe showed their hand a bit too much because a lot of the best looking shots in the film happen to be in the trailer. I'd say a good 40%.
Arguably, the best looking shot is the poster, or one of the most meaningful shots is the poster.
The upside down. Wait, which one? The Sparks or the Statue of Liberty?
The Statue of Liberty.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that's
upside
that's
down
one of the
too.
greatest. Like,
that was insane.
I had chills.
That is the movie, and it's like okay, that's like a little on the nose, but I feel like it just feels like it's on the nose because we've seen it so much in all the promotional stuff. I feel like if I'd seen that without knowing anything about the film, I'd be like, oh, that's.
I mean,
That's amazing. It is a inversion of what we believe the American
dream
ideal
is.
is.
Yeah, sure.
And the American dream. Like it's great.
I mean, trailers since the dawn of time have shown too much, and
Yep.
some of the best shots from the movie happen to be in the trailer. But I think the whole movie looked amazing. Honestly, like
I would agree.
even the epilogue, like which. I mean, we'll talk about the epilogue later, but I mean, I think from the word go to the epilogue, it looked fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting that he mentions what did he say about the first half and the second half?
He said that the first half, I forget. Oh, I watched a video of a panel of him at TIFF, and he mentioned how the first act was inspired by minimalism, or not inspired, but it was minimalist, and then the second act was maximalist.
Call me crazy, but I don't like. I mean, thematically, yes, but like cinematography wise, it just,
Not aesthetically. That's what I'm saying.
like aesthetically,
It's the same.
It kept rolling, but.
No, I would actually agree. I don't feel like there's a huge difference between the way that the first part is shot and the way the second part is shot.
The only the most tangible differences are character based.
Yes,
And-
it's basically all narrative based.
Yeah,
The separation of the intermission is
and lighting, like it's
Sure. Yeah. There's a
It's-
few technical things to.
There's also I will say there's a lot like the marble mines and stuff. I don't remember that stuff being in the trailer. That's some of my favorite shots where they look like ants.
I was gonna say, yeah, when they're at the quarry, that astounding. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's like, yo,
the
how
shot
did
of
you
the
make
train
this
blowing
with
up?
10 million?
the train.
The wide shot of the train when they're like the helicopter shot.
Yeah, sure.
Ooh, yeah.
I was floating, and then right. Okay, well, I will say, my favorite part of the film, and I don't think my excitement peaked any more than the overture. That's the most I ever enjoyed the film. Granted, I was like, "This is awesome," and then ended. But we got some phenomenal shots of the camera rigged onto like the front of a car. Those shots of the road were just like
Mesmerizing.
phenomenal.
I think everything about basically almost everything visual and technical. I think it's kind of firing on all cylinders,
Yeah.
which again is kind of amazing because it's a $10 million, but it's less than a $10 million budget.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And let me remind you that something like Deadpool and Wolverine has a budget of like $250 million.
Right.
That's hard to wrap your mind
But
around.
like I agree with what you're saying, Mason, about how like it's special because I've seen a lot of debate about some of the narrative and what the movie may or may not be saying, but ultimately I haven't seen I haven't like seen something like that and felt something like that in a minute.
Yeah,
And-
that's true.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
in the theater.
I
Well, I
think
will say-
I've
Go ahead.
this has been stirring in my head for a long time. I think that the comparison I would make is Todd Field's Tar. I think that it's special. It's trying to say something. It's taking big swings. Does it always hit the ball? No.
I like Tar.
Does it sometimes? Yes.
Yeah.
I think that it's I have a love-hate relationship with this the same way that I do with Tar. If that makes sense.
I think this is much more of a practical or like a technical achievement than Tar. Even though Tar looks fantastic and it sounds great.
Yeah. But I think like if I've rewatched some of the Tar scenes and it's like, dude, the cinematography in that is
it's excellent. It's so
incredible.
Good. Yeah. That's a good watch. I like it.
But again, there are narrative things that are simultaneously like not holding me back and holding me back.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the listeners out there, we haven't really even talked about the
synopsis,
sort of the synopsis, what the movie entails. If you're listening to us, you probably have a good idea. But the Brutalist is about a dude escaping post-war Europe, and he's an
Budapest.
Huh?
Budapest.
And his Adrian Brody plays Laszlo Toth, and he's an architect who's moved to Philadelphia, and
Go Birds.
yeah, go Birds.
Fly Eagles fly.
And Brutus architecture. That's his wheelhouse, and he gets noticed by wealthy bureaucrat Harrison Van Buren, played by Guy Pearce, and his family. And he starts off with a little project for his house. Oh my goodness.
We had an Eraserhead moment. Continue.
But he gets noticed by Harrison Van Buren, and he does a little library project for him, and then he's like, I want you to make this huge monument in honor of his dead mom, right? Or
Yeah.
Yes.
in honor of his dead mom, and he wants it to be a community center church weird.
He
Based around
he wanted to make a
Christianity,
YMCA.
He wanted to have a Dave and Buster's
Yeah.
and like a chapel
Yeah.
in the same building, basically.
And a Chuck E. Cheese and a gym
Mhm.
Yeah.
and a sports complex.
and a Top Golf. And he asks Laszlo Toth to spearhead the project.
Mhm.
And that is
And this is
that's
coming
about
off
the
the
first
heels
act of the film.
of the whole library thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot. I guess you're just giving the log line, but
Yeah.
like, yeah. Okay.
yeah, that's sort of where we're dropped in.
Yep.
But right off the bat, something's brewing beneath the surface of the substance, and the substance. We just got done talking about the substance before this.
Yeah.
The Brutalist. Something's brewing beneath the Brutalist, and
Laszlo Toth shows up opposite Margaret Qualley in the substance.
but
Would have been a lot cooler if they did.
but where
I think both of these movies combined would be better than the individual.
Yeah. True.
I'm just kidding. That was
But where do we want to start narratively
I don't
with the
know.
Brutalist?
Wait, what?
I said, where do we want to start narratively with the Brutalist?
I mean, I think we got to talk about the overture.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
I don't believe that there has been a actual overture to a film in what 50, 60 years. I don't even.
Yeah.
don't-
When you
I
said
don't even know.
overture, when you talked about the film, I thought it meant that like it was just score and picture, kind of like what 2001 did. I didn't realize that it was just like a prologue. Those were sort of synonymous. But Corbett in interviews talks about how he's trying to evoke these sort of cinematic approaches of that time, both with deciding to shoot on VistaVision, as well as just how he chooses to set things. I think that was very intentional.
Yep. And we get this just I don't know, mesmerizing, journey to America, and it's distorted, and we see, a distorted view of the Statue of Liberty, and it's cramped and it's confusing.
That shot of the Statue of Liberty, I can't like. like incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I don't know
Paired with the score too.
where I don't know where you all are with the score, but I think that the score is really helping there.
Yeah, no, that's the best moment of the score in my opinion. I don't think. Yeah,
Yeah, I would agree.
that it is so effective. That's one of the best uses of music in film. In several years of recent memory. And honestly, I mean, speaking to the monumentality of this film, my mind actually goes to Dune. Like, a lot of this reminds me of the scale, but I mean, the whole Harkonnen like house is based on brutalist architecture, but just like the wide shots and the scale of everything reminds me of it, and just how large and grand everything is. And so to compare a film like this to something with a almost infinite budget, speaks volumes. But
yeah, I mean it's
I mean the sort of 4-note motive that gets played 40 million times is heard for the first time in this, and it definitely felt reminiscent of Dune, with the sort of triumphant blaring cacophony of sound.
So basically Laszlo, stays in Philadelphia. He has a cousin there. The cousin has a Catholic wife, and the cousin has a furniture business, and he basically starts to work there. And then he's commissioned to renovate the library of a home owned by the wealthy industrialist Harrison Lee Van Buren. Any thoughts?
I love this part of the movie. Really slow, really honestly, like it was weirdly inviting. It feels weird to say like inviting considering what happens later in the movie, but it felt like very warm and inviting, and like just all like earnest, like just watching Laszlo like plan and build the library and sort of like start his humble beginnings in America was like it was really beautiful.
Yes, and I think that the whole the whole like I mean I don't know if I would call it a subplot, but the stuff with the cousin and the Catholic wife is like really important, and I think that's a great example of the movie like really working there. Like really working.
Yeah, that the dancing scene is very, very interesting. I mean I really liked it, but it's
and we assume that the wife made up a story so he would get kicked out, and that sense of like longing to belong.
Yeah.
Is there from the very beginning.
Yeah. But is like right as he's been, or not right as he's been kicked out, but he goes to work at a coal mine, right? He goes to work at like a coal factory.
Yeah. After and the cousin kicks him out because of the wife, and also because of the failed, renovation at the house. And I believe that it's yeah, I think I think it's 3 years later. There's a big time jump, and Toth is, on heroin and such, and he's just kind of working at the coal mines.
He lives there in like their dormitory almost. Just wakes
I thought he was staying at like a
Well, I heard like the bell ring and it was like time to get to work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he just shoveling coal, and then Van Buren shows up out of the blue, even though he was very angry about this surprise library renovation and thought it was hideous and ugly, and how did these men get into his house? And there's a whole breakdown earlier, but he finds them 3 years later, and he comes with receipts.
Well, I think the reason that he gets his attention is very interesting. Do you remember why he comes to him?
To be honest with you, I don't remember a lot about this movie because I saw it like a month ago. It's really long.
So what he hands him is a picture from a magazine.
Yes.
And this is
Sure,
actually
of
I
his
actually-
old
actually
work,
really like
of
this.
his previous work.
One of the things we find about Harrison as the film goes on, and he's handed the magazine that has the picture of the library with his architectural design, is that he had external sources validating this as a good thing. And I think Harrison, while he's powerful and while he has influence, he doesn't really have taste, and he needs to be told what is good. And so I think that appearing in the magazine is sort of the impetus of that, because he was mad at it until people looked at it and said, wow, that's impressive. And then he's like, oh, wait, it is impressive. But he doesn't believe. He's just,
he realized.
I think there's a great role playing between like being wealthy and being creative.
Yep.
Toth is very creative. He has a bunch of that in him. He's not wealthy. Van Buren doesn't seem like he has taste or is creative in any regard, but he's extremely wealthy.
And I think intentionally it's left pretty vague as to how he acquired his wealth. He just said that he made a few like good business decisions, and so supposedly he's just stumbled upon this immense fortune that he can kind of just invest in and have huge side projects in as he pleases.
But he's realized that it's that having this appreciation for Toph's architecture makes him smart.
It makes him feel pretty smart.
It makes him feel pretty smart. It makes him feel good that he's got his creation in his own house, and look at all of his smart buddies hyping up his work, and he wants a piece of the intellectual pie.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see later that that having the art in and of itself is not enough.
Well, and this is, I'm going to circle back to the interview that I listened to with Corbet. I'll leave my thoughts of this aside for a second, but I think there's almost no room for doubt as to this film being an allegory of sorts, or even Brady being a self-insert for Brody's character, because ultimately in the interview he directly related his experience to Brody's and sort of likened the Harrison Van Buren figure to like film producers and people who just sort of oversee the who hold the funds and control the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and during the construction of the Brutalist piece, there's always people,
messing
consultants,
with this.
that are clashing with him.
I mean, that's just Lynch. That's
he doesn't
David
feel
Lynch
like he
and
has the freedom to actually create anything.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, Lynch,
and that does not feel like subtext. I don't even know if it's really meant to be subtext.
No, I think it's pretty blatant.
Yes. And we saw that in his Golden Globe speech. He's like, "Give us the final cut.
Mm-hmm.
Let me have more creative control."
That's what. There's 1,000 videos of David Lynch saying that the reason why Dune was terrible his Dune was terrible was because he doesn't have the final cut.
Yep.
And
I feel like we haven't talked about this on the pod or anything, and I know that Jacob hasn't seen Mulholland Drive. I don't want to spoil anything, but I feel like that is a big part of Mulholland Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Is an angriness at the kind of
the state of the industry. Yeah.
Yes, and like how everything's laid out and how everything is kind of built up like building blocks.
And the structures of power within that industry. And
sure.
Yeah.
I honestly think that tie-in is like pretty cool. Like that wasn't really something that I was thinking about making the movie. Like or watching the movie. I think the story itself is very well contained and isolated to the architecture subject that I wasn't like immediately thinking about. Brady maybe being a self-insert for Laszlo in that regard. But I think that is like pretty interesting.
I also think it's not only like a singular stand-in for Brady, because I think that obviously like they brought in Adrian Brody because he's a great actor, but his parents or grandparents or whatever, like they went through this, and he's talked about that a lot, and he brought a lot to the story about like actually knowing this and feeling this from generations past.
Yeah.
Does someone else like want to go through the plot, or do you like want me to continue? Because I honestly, you all have seen this much more recently than I have, so I'm still I'm just looking at a synopsis. I don't know if that's like.
Where are we at? I'm trying to remember where we stopped.
We were talking about when he takes him out to lunch and he's showing him his previous work.
Yeah,
and
so
him feeling and asking about.
So then after that, he invites him to a party and reveals to everyone that he's like a very accomplished architect in Europe.
Yeah.
And then he commissions him for this like grand project in tribute.
Well, this dinner,
his now dead mother.
Well, this dinner party, they're asking him questions and they listen to him talk, but the expressions on their faces are ones of a slight confusion and things going over their head, one ear out the other. But because that this famous architect is in the room, that they don't care what he's saying. They're oohing
and ahhing because he's
they're oohing and ahhing, and
again the people with the power and influence don't recognize art or taste, or like they don't possess it, but when they're told that it's good, they're like, oh, this is valuable.
They've never needed to decide for themselves.
Yes,
they see the monetary value in having Laszlo in the room with them. Very stimulating for some people in the room.
Yeah,
and
pause.
There's a great one-liner in this movie that we'll save for the end.
Yeah,
but then the project goes off the ground, and that's
and it's important to say that Harrison introduces Toth to a lawyer that we assume is able to expedite the process of immigrating
his family.
Ezrabet, which is Lalo's wife, and Zofia, the niece. And that's basically like that's when the intermission comes, basically.
Yeah.
And then we start part 2.
That's
and
like
I think
2 hours.
I think that it's pretty easy. I think 95% of people that I've seen write about this have all said that part 1 is definitively better than part 2.
Agreed.
I agree. But I will say this was
go ahead.
Oh, this was just like a fun moment, but I saw this with Ethan, Heath, and Micah, and I think we all stood up and we were all nodding in agreement at how just taken aback by how good the first half is. And I do want to be on the record saying that I was pretty floored with the first hour and a half to 2 hour run of this movie.
Yeah.
Going into the intermission, I was blown away, and despite some other thoughts I have about the second half and the ending, I do think that the first half of this movie is, as Mason said, a stunning accomplishment. I love that it exists. I love that we have it. I think it's amazing.
I will say that I'm not going to sit here and argue that the execution of the second part is better, because I don't believe it is. I don't think the second part is better. I do think that bigger swings are taken in the second part, and I think that there's like way more meat to the bone in the second part. Whether that meat is tasty is up for debate, but I think that there is like more there. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we can kind of get into that. Because I do think that the biggest, I mean, I think that the biggest problems are in the second parts.
Yeah. I think also that's where the subtext really starts to drip through. And I don't know. I mean, I still want to stick in the first half for a second because I did want to discuss one scene and talk about the score really quick.
Okay.
This was fascinating, and just more of a comment and on I guess the approach of the music within this. So during the dinner party with the lawyer, I believe it's the first time around. I don't know. This might be. I think it might have been the scene where. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong. When does he throw the penny at Laszlo? Is that second?
That's in the second part.
Okay.
That's at the very beginning of the second half.
It is.
Yeah.
That's in the second part
Okay.
because the
Then maybe I'm jumping the gun.
Ezra and Zofia are.
Okay, then I am
both
jumping the
there.
gun.
Yeah,
I believe.
because he gets offended and his wife is like, oh, well, that's just like his way of humor, like you know.
And that I think that debatably could be the most important scene.
Yeah,
and I
for
think
sure.
That is where we start to be like, oh, this is not going to. I mean, we knew that there was still an hour and a half left, but that's when it starts going. It kind of starts snaking and going into odd directions. I would say difficult directions. Maybe.
I do want to add. This is about the first half too. I think that when you're watching the first half, there's something like lurking underneath the surface that you're not fully able to articulate, and I think that aspect was done very well. Whether you like the second half or you don't, I think despite like sort of like the joy and like
There's a discernible excitement within the first act, but you still, I agree, you still can feel.
Like I feel like we were talking about this at the intermission, but we knew that shit was going to hit the fan.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You know what's going to happen. You don't know how it's going to happen, and I think that the how is interesting. And I also think that it's not. Again, it's not black and white. It's like something bad happened. We have to confront him. This guy is evil. I don't think it's that at all, really.
And I think a lot of the credit to that has to go to Guy Pearce's performance. And I want to say that Guy Pearce's performance is my favorite in the movie and one of my favorites of the year. I really like Guy Pearce. He's not in a lot of movies. I feel like we don't really get him a whole lot, like in a lot of stuff anymore. So to have him in a huge role like this,
he's amazing.
Yeah. He played the character with the right amount of intensity and subtlety, and I feel like his characters in a lot of movies he plays are pretty complex. And the Guy Pearce's performance in The Brutus is like one of my favorites of the year. He got nominated for supporting actor. I think it's a close race between him and Yora from who plays Igor in Anora. It's a tight race. It's a tight race between the both of them.
I feel like Guy Pearce has to have it because it's a bigger role.
I think he'll.
You know what I mean?
I think he'll probably win.
Igor is more of a. I think,
but that's why I think those two performances are like my favorites of the year because they're because of just the subtlety and complexity.
No, yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
and I
gotta say, like Brody, he's basically in all 215 minutes of this.
Yeah,
and he keeps it on his shoulders pretty well.
He did do a good job.
Yeah,
I mean, that is not an easy role.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is as much minutia
good,
and creative decisions as Guy Pearce's role. But I mean, he does. He keeps it pretty well. He keeps it together.
But to me, if I feel like Guy Pearce is just from watching it, it feels like he had a really deep understanding of the screenplay and what Brady wanted to say and how he wanted that tension to build throughout the movie. And I think he was the performance that understood that the most and did the most with that.
I think he understood his character the most in relation to the voice of the script, in that there was in his performance a subtle but noticeable layer, or like a film of like the arrogance was almost a little bit too over the top, to where it felt borderline satirical,
Yeah.
but it was never too much. And so like just his grandiosity, and I don't know, just how volatile but like out of touch he was, is really played up just to the right amount. And Guy Pearce was great in his restraint with that, I think.
I also like how Joe Alwyn,
Yeah, he was great.
who plays Van Buren's son, like
Really evil.
yeah, he tries to be deceitful and subtle like his dad, but he has like he's a lot more emotional than
Way more on the surface, and he can't control it.
yeah, and I think he did. I think Alwyn did a great job there. That's my favorite performance I've seen from him personally. So, but shout out Guy Pearce.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great.
I'm loving it.
So then, part 2, Ezra and Sophia are there.
The dinner party.
Toth discovers that Ezra's now in a wheelchair due to osteoporosis, and Sophia is unable to speak or does not speak. Take that as you will. And then we basically just get the building, a lot of back and forth, going back to like the self-insert for Corbet.
I wanted to jump back really quick to the dinner party scene with the coin, but also this is the first thing that I noticed in the scene. They're talking. I was like, oh, they're playing an opera. And I was like, you know what? It sounds a bit Wagnerian in like in the scale of it, right? Now, I don't know what you remember from our intro to music class about Richard Wagner, but there was a he was,
I remember old Wagner.
yeah, he was incredibly anti-Semitic, and you know, one of the more I guess just hateful composers from his period, but he changed the medium no less. And so I thought it was a very interesting decision to play his. It was an excerpt from Das Rheingold, and I think it was really painting like a caricature of the Van Buren family as just brutal and kind of soulless, and hateful. That said, granted, okay, I said, you know, Wagner changed music and opera, and especially scoring within film as a whole, because he invented the leitmotif, or like he popularized it, which is coincidentally kind of the singular leg that this score stands on, is the 4-note leitmotif. So I just thought it was very interesting to give such weight to something that was a Wagnerian invention. I don't know if that was something that was considered. I seriously doubt it. I'm sure that the inclusion of the music in like the opera in the dinner party scene was intentional, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Wagner famously not a very good guy.
Yeah. That said, I thought it was interesting that the score was relying so heavy on that motive of the 4 notes, and then, but at the same time, I think it occupies many different spaces. At certain points, it's almost trying to do sort of a Steve Reich thing, where it's sort of undulating eighth notes of piano textures and strings in like I assume some, you know, virtual instruments or like pads or something, and then sometimes it's very industrial. I mean, it's like very on the nose. There's like a tink 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 Jacob and I were doing that before the episode started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very Steve Reich.
Well, Steve Reich has an album called
Different Trains.
Different Trains, which is about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
So
I thought that inclusion was
he's definitely inspired by him.
yeah, for sure inspired. Maybe a little bit too on the nose, but I appreciate when music engages with the contents of a film like that. So I think my biggest thoughts on the score is just they're similar to kind of the aesthetic approach of like the story and sometimes the visuals in my opinion. It just feels like there's no singular vision to lead it through, and it feels like it kind of interlopes between different styles, and it really never is just one thing that knows exactly what it is. And that was my biggest gripe with Queer as well, and that's something I really struggle to get over, is that when I feel like a film doesn't know or can't decide what it's going to be, I struggle. And I know sometimes it's intentional, but
Yeah, I think picking, I don't know how Bloomberg got in touch with Corbet, how he got attached to the project. I believe this is his second score ever.
yeah.
That's kind of interesting. I don't know why,
But
it was him.
I mean, minimalists, they don't. There's no use of motivic device. I mean, it's structural and it builds upon itself, and there's lots of repetition. But the use of melody or recognizable, I mean, the whole point of minimalism is that form is obscured, and so like you can't discern melody, or you can't discern the change within the forms, or it's very slow. But then to have such a identifiable theme that is so striking, I am curious as to like the thought process of the difference in approach, and that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I just think that it's I don't know if he was totally ready for something like this. I don't really know much about Bloomberg, but I don't know. He's not like. Have you listened to like his like music?
No, I mean I listened to the score again.
Yeah, I haven't listened to his music either, but he's been making music since 2005, but this is only his second score. So I would be interested to see if like he makes minimalist music, or if he makes. I don't really know what genre it is or anything.
Yeah, well that's the thing. I mean it's not one thing. It sort of.
Yeah, well,
interlopes
this
between different-
is
yeah.
not one thing.
Yeah,
But like, I would be interested to see if like his stuff is cohesive in any way.
yeah.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I do understand the constraints though when you're scoring. Is that one? There's the time considerations. The turnaround is just like ruthless. Sometimes you have like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've heard composers talk about they have 3 weeks to complete a score, or it's like
it's fast turnaround.
yeah, no, it's crazy. And in TV, it's even worse.
Yeah.
They have like
But
a week to do an episode, like 20 minutes of music. It's
I mean, a lot of directors though, like usually are in contact, like being like, "Hey,
that's ideally, yeah. Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, this Brutalist script has apparently been completed for 7 years.
Yeah, that's
so.
what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
They wrote it right after, off the heels of what was it, Lux something?
Vox
or
Lux.
Vox Lux.
That was
Yeah.
his first movie.
Apparently,
That was not his first movie.
Or that's not what was his first movie?
no.
His first movie was the 2015 Robert Pattinson one.
Yeah.
Give me a second.
But in the interview, he was saying his gift to the cinematographer after Vox Lux wrapped was the script to The Brutalist. So yes, this has been in the works for a very long time. But
Yeah.
you know, as a composer, yes, there's the time constraints. There's also just like you got to write quickly. It's a lot of music volume. But I always think that I don't know. Maybe this is like a zeitgeist thing of how composition is approached in the current day. But I think maybe now directors want more textures and just kind of ambiance versus like actual like scoring that engages with the drama. And I watched A Different Man last night and I was blown away by the score because it felt so intentional. It wasn't meandering, and it feels like, because sometimes I suspect that like certain cues could come together within like an hour. I was like, yeah, they just threw this together. But it felt very intentional, and there was a repetition of different themes, and it evolved. So I don't know. In Cliff Notes, I wanted more from the score. I wanted it to be more grand. If the movie is truly going to be about brutalism and about the scale, I either wanted it to be full on minimalism and commit to that structure, because that would also work with the time period. Minimalism was a sort of
on the come up.
Yeah, on the come up with that. And so that would have made a lot of sense, especially with the structural nature of it. That would have been a really nice companion to the architecture. If they're going to go full like operatic, score it, make it huge. Do like a Goldsmith, but I don't know. It just kind of hemmed and hawed and didn't really amount to much beyond the 4-note motif, which the first time it plays is awesome, and it does it again and again and again. So,
yeah,
I think of when I was watching Oppenheimer for the first time, and those like first like 2 minutes, or like even like the first like 15, 20 minutes where the music like just doesn't stop, and you're just constantly having auditory information just thrown at you left and right, and the music is just like constantly lush and evolving, and then something like this.
Because truly, the music can heighten the. I mean, with Oppenheimer, Göransson's work. Now, that's not my favorite Göransson score, but I mean, in the scenes. I mean, you remember, of course, the "Can you hear the music?" and then the Trinity scene, and then I remember Kitty's theme, and there's just a bunch of.
Well, I remember a lot of scenes from Oppenheimer because of like the music.
Because of the music, exactly.
Yeah.
It can do so much to enhance your engagement with that moment.
Which I actually think is I think that's one of Nolan's best traits, is implementing and purposefully using cues. I'm not taking away from Göransson or Zimmer's work.
Yeah, sure.
But I think that I feel like he cares about that a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nolan does.
And so I don't know if it's the time constraint that informed this, or if it's just like Brady wanted something that would strip it back and just allow for characters to talk, but I don't know.
I will say this, because we were talking about Corbet's filmography. So in 2015, he did The Childhood of a Leader, which is with Robert Pattinson. Mm-hmm. But before that, this is really interesting to me. He was an actor for a long time before this, and he was in 13, which is the Catherine Hardwicke film that's pretty popular. He was in Mysterious Skin, which is the Greg Araki film. He was in the American remake of Funny Games, which is Michael Haneke film.
I've heard people really like him in the Funny Games remake.
Yeah, and then he was in Melancholia, a Lars von Trier film, which is
that with Nicole Kidman?
Dude, this guy has taste. Okay, this guy was working. Okay, with,
I will say. I guess I'll be the first to go out and say, like, I've watched interviews of Corbet, and I have a lot of respect for what he wants to do with the medium, or like what his individual aims are, like for his own work personally, and what he wants to do, what he wants his work to help do for the medium as a whole. I respect that a lot. I feel like he just comes off as a bit abrasive and self-involved, and I just have a hard time getting behind, some of the sentiments based on like how it's conveyed.
That's fair. I think that, look, if I was going to be devil's advocate, I would say this is obviously his first major swing, and I think that it's at times extremely successful, and he'll figure this out. Okay, he'll get there.
But also like some of the things I've seen from him are like he comes off as frankly like annoying.
Yeah.
But
yes,
I'm
not talking about the personality of the guy. I'm saying do I believe that he will make a really good film in the next 20 to 30 years? I do.
I mean, his existence in the medium is undoubtedly a net positive.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, if I were to like nitpick oh well, this movie's being held back because he's pompous and annoying, then I might as well might not watch like any movie ever because
Yeah,
that's
true.
most.
Yeah, I mean that's
just people
that's
in the
really
arts.
silly. I mean I'm not saying that it's really silly, but I'm just saying Brady Corbet is not the first director to come along. I mean, famously, Orson Welles said Stanley Kubrick sucks, Charlie Chaplin was a fake, like all of this stuff. Like these guys almost live and die on this kind of stuff.
No, yeah, Corbet has fantastic taste though. Like from what I've heard and what he's mentioned, he seems to be very well. He's knowledgeable. I mean, and that's an understatement.
Yes.
On
but
this
it is
area.
it is very interesting that he is so upfront about like, you need to give me artistic freedom. I know what's best. I'm right almost all the time.
He's
like that,
quite. Yeah,
I will say
he's
that is
very
interesting.
dogmatic in how he talks, and I don't know. He's also like I don't know, the one thing that irks me is the Sean Baker quote, or the quote from the Sean Baker Directors on Directors, where he's like, people don't make 3-hour movies anymore, like unless someone's wearing tights and a cape.
Yeah, sure.
And,
But it's like, is he necessarily wrong?
yes, Scorsese's past 2 movies. I mean, granted, it's Scorsese, but like, it's being done.
I mean,
it's being done. I think
Scorsese is the exception.
Yeah. But
And also, like, in his defense, like, you know, we get stuff like Batman v Superman that's like 2.5 hours long.
Sure,
Like,
yeah.
Why is that long?
I do think that that point is interesting about give me artistic freedom. I know it's best because I don't know. There's also like other directors that seemingly like are able to get their point across like perfectly fine and don't feel a need to
Oppenheimer,
say that, which
Dune
I think,
Part 2,
I don't
those
know,
are all
it's kinda
north
funny.
of 2.5 hours. Like the big oh yeah. A word that
I'm gonna be sideways for a second. Just like
a
I'm
word that
gonna be sideways like Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, I was gonna say Alexander Payne reference.
Yeah.
a word that Corbet used like 4 times within the interview was intermezzo. He just wanted us to know that he knew what that word meant.
He's very. I mean, I would be remiss to
Dramaturgically.
say that he does not come across as extremely pretentious, because he certainly does.
He does.
And it's very annoying. And I don't know why he's doing this kind of stuff. But I will say, I do think that there's a part of me that thinks, oh, he's saying what a lot of these directors are saying, but they're just being extremely respectful and they're just not going to say it. Like the Golden Globe speech at the very end where he's like, directors want final cut. You give us final cut.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd be remiss to think any director doesn't think that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
like,
some people are willing to swallow the hard pill though, because the pill is several $1 million in their
Sure.
bank account. But so I mean, is that? I mean, that's kind of the whole crux of artistry, right? And even coming back to this film is like, compromising your vision for some monetary amount, or like, I don't know, will you allow your vision to be labeled with a price tag, or is that something that you're truly going to be unwavering about?
yeah, I just think that his thought process behind films like this don't get publicity and financial backing like big studio blockbuster films do. I don't think that's a complex point. I would say most people would agree with that.
Yeah. Especially this is
Like,
A24, right?
I mean,
This is A24.
like Captain America, Brave New World, or whatever the new
Yeah.
one is that comes out in February. There's posters of it everywhere. They've got $50 to $70 million. I mean, even the new Mission Impossible film, the reported budget is $350 million.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's a staggering number.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, can we not just give $2 million more to this? And again, the argument between that is like, this made $7 million. Mission Impossible will make $700 million.
Yeah.
So
And then you have to ask, what's really keeping the industry alive?
yes, because we can only go at the superhero blockbusters so much, because if those things don't exist,
Yeah.
then maybe there's not an industry. And that's the same argument between, oh, why are there still sequels being made? Why are there Disney live action remakes being? Well, because they make $1 billion. Why do you think they're being made? Like, Inside Out 2 was the highest grossing film last year. Why do you think that was made? Because they won a bunch of money.
Cha-ching.
Okay,
Brady's a funny guy.
He is. I don't know. The interview that I watched him in, he looked a little bit inebriated, and he was a little bit dismissive of the panelist who is hosting. But
I do want to mention like one more thing.
I'm not trying to smear the guy.
I do want to mention like one more thing about Brady that I found interesting. I watched the I think it was the Cannes panel after they premiered The Brutalist, and he visibly got pretty emotional when talking about the movie because he talked about how it was like
I will laugh at this.
Like it was a grueling process, and like he started tearing up. He's like, I've been writing this, this script has been done for 8 years, and it's been like super like incredibly difficult to be made, blah 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 blah. And he's like, it's just been really hard. I couldn't be more proud and stuff like that. And I don't know, this like, despite the movie feeling very self-contained, this feels like a very this movie almost feels like a very painful experience for Brady.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't like it like he's literally Laszlo. He's literally him.
I thought you were gonna say, because we were talking earlier, I thought you said that like he started crying when he mentioned how long the film was.
Oh yeah, well he did. He also mentioned that he was like they just don't make them like they used to, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, I mean some of that. Look, the guy is pretentious and annoying. I'll be the first one to say that he is. I just think that some of his sentiments.
No, I agree with him.
Commend him.
I agree with him. Yeah. I find that I usually...
But it's like the way that which he is doing that is just I would not go about
100%.
He's coming across as rude. I don't know. It's a mess, and
I couldn't agree with you more.
Let's finish talking about the movie before we get into the AI stuff. But I think that's another interesting conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about you got to talk about the epilogue.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about that.
Yeah. Well, first, I mean,
Can we...
let me just like kind of recap like the whole ending of the
Wait, no,
the
I want to
second
talk
part,
about
like, if I can do that really quickly. So oh goodness, does someone else want to do that?
the second half.
I'm trying to, I don't remember it that well, and some of this I'm reading, I don't remember the timeline of it.
Well, we have to. That's true. It is kind of a haze. So he's building in Pennsylvania, and I don't know how long he stays there, and then he goes to Italy, and then he comes back to Pennsylvania, and the timeline's sort of murky. But we should maybe hit on the broad strokes.
I mean,
yes, and it's important because he goes to the mines with Harrison.
Yeah.
Harrison rapes Toth while he's intoxicated.
Yeah.
Calls him a social leech, and then back on the site, Toth kind of begins to unravel. He starts getting really frustrated at people. He tells Ezra Beth that they're not welcome in America, and then we get another like the kind of, I don't even know how to explain it. Like the whole like sex scene stuff, which it's not very clear in my mind. I don't really remember it that well.
Is this the one?
Someone else like
the sheet.
Yeah.
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 And he almost kills Ezra Beth because he gives her a bunch of heroin to soothe the pain.
I will say, the one thing about the second act is that at a certain point it was predictable. I was pretty much kind of tuned into everything. Once she was sick, I was like, oh, they're gonna run out of pills. Oh, now he's gonna give her the heroin. She'll probably overdose. She's either gonna overdose or die. Okay, she's not dead. Okay. And then
I do think that it's interesting that she confronts Harrison later,
And then
and Toph
once he
does
got
not.
confronted, I was like, well, there's only one thing that can happen now. And sure
Yes.
enough, it happens.
And we knew that someone had to confront him. We would probably assume that it would be her. I think the broad strokes of it are fairly predictable. I don't think anyone could have predicted the rape scene.
Nope.
Although I think that it does make sense. I do think that's one of the best scenes.
Wait.
In my opinion.
Oh, no. Okay. A lot of people, granted, I don't want to be insensitive about like the posturing of it, and because a lot of people, like, and rightly so, like, have a volatile reaction to like sexual violence of pretty much any capacity. But I think if we're talking subtext, it's one of the most profound and, like, you know,
it was gut wrenching.
Yeah, and I was like, man, this is like that. I found it to be a very effective choice.
Yes.
Again, going back to the thing before, he doesn't just want the art. He wants what's inside the person that creates the art.
Yeah.
That's like kind of my reading of it. There's a lot more there.
Yeah, obviously.
I think that Corbet has. Well, I know that Corbet has downplayed. Now, this is like a broad stroke, like over the whole film. But he has said that this is in no way a political film, and which is interesting to me.
I want to talk about this because there's explicit mention of the creation of Israel and Zionism.
Yeah.
And
sure.
And people have quickly jumped on, oh, The Brutalist is a Zionist movie. Mm-hmm. And this me personally speaking,
that's stupid.
Me personally speaking, this is the conclusion I have come to. I don't think that is the case because I think that Israel and Jerusalem in the movie is meant to be taken as a failure because at their lowest, when they move into the apartment in New York and the niece and his wife want to move back to or not move back, but they want to move to Jerusalem because they've been drained dry and just used and abused by the
They've been chewed and spat out by
the
American
Van Burens, and they just want to call it quits and go to Jerusalem because they're not welcome elsewhere. But you know, Laszlo like doesn't want to do that, wants to stick it out and prove that he's worth it. And I think that is what that means in the movie. I don't think that. Now, I don't really, me personally, I don't think that has really. I don't really think he was trying to say anything about what is going on in Gaza right now, especially if the script was written
7 years ago.
7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, now, a lot of people have cited that. Yeah, it was written like 10 years ago.
That occupation and that what's been going on there has been happening for a while, but not the recent bombardment and all that. So
sure.
I mean, the means of acquiring the land were forcible, and it is like a settler colonial state nonetheless. But
that's my personal personal take on the movie. I don't think it's.
But I don't think that that's like, oh, that's the meaning of the movie. I think it's way more about artistry and
for sure,
and
for sure.
the way that brutalism and the American dream kind of walk hand in hand.
And I don't blame people for maybe like being on guard for stuff like that because you have a movie like September 5th, which is about like the Israeli Olympians like getting held hostage by the Palestinians at the 1970 something Olympics. Conveniently, that movie comes out during the thick of everything and is being paraded around for Oscars, and it's a movie that this year
That's crazy.
And it seemingly came out of nowhere. And I mean, Jonathan Glazer was like trembling when he gave the speech for when he was trembling.
I mean, that's just
he was trembling.
Let's not even go there about the zone of interest, like the zone of interest and all that stuff. It kind of seems silly to me.
Yeah, no. But
also, I will say, like, in terms of, well, never mind. Let's just move on.
Well, I'm just.
I was about to start talking about Gaspar Noé films and Lars von Trier films, but I'm not even gonna go there.
I'm just saying, like, you have a lot of movies in Hollywood that reinforce the status quo, and
Sure.
you have. I mean, people like Jonathan Glazer are the outlier, and I don't think that this movie's trying to do that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Trying to do that as an
You want to talk about the epilogue?
Trying to be political.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, we can do the epilogue.
Wait, no. Let's talk about the confrontation and the ending of the part 2. What are our thoughts?
I don't know. Okay. I don't want to be I don't be like dismissive. Maybe I don't know, maybe this makes sense, and maybe I'm trying to think like in a practical scenario if this would be the case. But like Ezra Bett choosing to like get off the walker and like use her own 2 legs to go and tell Harrison like what happened. I was like, I don't know. I didn't know if that was if that symbolism felt a little bit too like hammy or not, but
I think the most interesting part of that is Van Buren killing himself after
I feel like that was the only thing that could happen once it got aired out.
Sure.
I thought he was gonna jump from the top and like be dead on the altar, and I
thought he was gonna be on the marble.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, that would have made sense.
Yeah.
Okay, epilogue. Thoughts?
Bad. I don't like the epilogue.
Yeah, not it.
This is.
I don't know if I would say I strongly disagree. I think the epilogue is a lot better than most of part 2.
This is my.
I think that inclusion like almost won me back.
This is my reasoning for why I don't think the epilogue works. I think the one thing about the epilogue that works is really the final line in the movie, which is it's not about the journey, it's about the destination. I think that the inclusion of that line is pretty interesting. However, considering the scene that just happened previously, I felt like I was reeling from like the confrontation and
it's all kind of a blur. The last 25 minutes before the epilogue are just like.
Well, I feel like I'm reeling from the confrontation and from the light from the cross showing on the marble.
Yeah.
And then it's like I'm dreaming, and then somebody.
It just disrupts that sort of spell.
It feels like I'm dreaming, and then somebody
intentionally,
starts,
for sure.
Feels like I'm dreaming, and somebody starts violently shaking me awake.
Yeah.
And slaps me in the face. That's what the epilogue felt like. I didn't have any time to breathe or think about the ending, and I think it just would have been a lot more powerful if it had ended right there. And I think the epilogue felt very it felt out of place, and it didn't work for me.
I think it makes sense that Corbet wanted to engage with the legacy of, Laszlo and what brutalism was and, its impact. I also think, again, from the position of a self-insert, he might be suggesting like
guys, I'm going to be goated.
He's like, y'all don't know what I'm doing. And he said this in the interview. He's like, it took me a long time to find the people that would appreciate this film because a lot of people didn't understand it. And he took the posture of like, it's going over people's heads. And so I think he sees himself as a misunderstood artistic sort of savant that is ahead of his time and that we don't have the intellectual tools to decipher what he's providing us at the moment. And in years,
I would semi-disagree with that reading. I see what you're saying. I think my reading of it is there's 2 names that we haven't brought up throughout this whole thing. One of them is Sophia, and the other is Mona Fastvold, Corbet's spouse, wrote this. They both wrote it together, and she's a director in her own right. And I think that a lot of her ideas are in this epilogue, and I think that I just think that it's interesting that Sophia gives the speech at the end.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've been struggling because like I really want to rewatch it because I feel like there's much more of that character than like what I originally thought or what I originally read. Just like on a first watch. Because I don't think she's just a stand-in for like a symbol or a theme. I think that there's kind of more there, if that makes sense.
What's her first line of the movie? I'm trying to remember. What's her first line in the movie? Like, when does she just...
The first time she speaks is when she wants to move to Jerusalem.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's also really interesting that the first shot of the film is her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the last shot of the film is her.
Yeah.
She bookends the film.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't want to gloss over the fact that Mona co-wrote this with Corbet and had a lot of input into this. So I don't think that it's necessarily like everything is a Corbet self-insert and it's all about Corbet.
Well, do you think that Sophie is a insert for Mona then?
I think it's possible.
Okay.
I just that's the thing where it's like I have a love-hate relationship with this because like I like a lot of parts of it. I don't like a lot of parts of it. But I've been thinking about it a lot and I owe it a rewatch and possibly another rewatch after that because I just feel like there's too much there for me to understand all of it.
I should clarify that I do think the epilogue, like the idea of the epilogue and re-examining his legacy and jumping that far in the future was like it is interesting, but I think it was like the flashiness of it. Which the flashiness of it and the song choice at the end, which
I was just trying to evoke the 80s maybe.
Which I'm sure he's saying something there, but for me it felt.
Yeah, I mean he's talked about the song choice.
Yeah, how'd you read it?
And I'm what?
Or how did y'all read it? Because I didn't.
Well, I mean the lyrics are obviously just the film.
One for you, one for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and not just the title. I mean the other lyrics as well. And I don't know. I kind of read it as like a Tar ending. I remember watching the end of Tar, and I was like, "That's one of the worst endings I've ever felt. That's gonna age poorly." I feel like I've kind of reversed my thought on that. And I don't know. I just feel like there's a little bit of that here.
I think the epilogue works. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just I don't know. Like the Tar ending was weird, but I felt like it was given like the space to be weird. I feel like in the reason that I'm struggling with the epilogue is that it comes in the wake of the confrontation that came immediately before, and I think that like the flashiness of it just doesn't really work when that's the scene that accompanied it.
Do you think that the film could end without the epilogue though? I don't know if it could. Maybe it could. I feel like that'd be a little bit too abrupt, and that.
That's a good point.
I think it desperately needs the epilogue. Now, whether you like the execution of the epilogue or you think that the cue at the end should have been different, that's understandable to me. I think if it had ended at the very end of part 2, I'm like
it's a worse movie.
Out on that.
Yeah.
It's just too predictable.
Yeah, I think it's
and it feels like I just wasted 205 minutes.
It's definitely a worse ending. I mean, the epilogue improves it. I'd say it's definitely.
But the epilogue is just, I don't know, it's just hard. I mean, the whole film, I feel like I just haven't wrapped my arms around it. It's just very, I don't know, there's just something about it where I feel like it's like Tar. If I wanted to give you a reading of Tar after one watch, that's just almost like ignorant of me.
Yeah.
A full reading at least. I can give my thoughts and, like we're doing here, but
yeah,
I'm not going to make this grand statement about how I think the film is this or is not this after one viewing. I feel like that's a little bit unfair.
I like the idea of the epilogue. I just felt like it was, in the end, like too flashy.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. And that makes sense to me.
I'm neutral on it. I really don't. I think it didn't really hammer anything home. It wasn't a super affecting ending. But at the same time, I agree with you that it just would have been kind of contrived for it to end. Like it would have just felt a little bit immature almost to end with just Van Buren's death. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the epilogue is like, oh, that's a weird ending. I don't like that. It's confusing. I've got to think about it. I might have to research it. I think that it at least gives you a little bit of something at the end. And like as for the film as a whole, again, I mean, I still have my original thoughts. Like, far from perfect. Doesn't hit all the swings. I'm glad it's a thing, and I'm glad that it took swings, and I'm glad we have movies like this.
Mm-hmm. I just think the thing that bugs me about it again most is just the stance that Corbet is assuming amidst all of this. Like, honestly, I think I would allow myself to enjoy the film so much more if he didn't carry himself like he just made the next new Citizen Kane.
Sure, yeah.
And I think, like, truly, I do think it's hampering my enjoyment of, like, this dude really because, well, we should talk about the use of AI. Like, I just think it's so ironic to make a film that's about artistic integrity and not compromising your values, as a creative, and then outsourcing like that. That just seems antithetical and kind of like, I don't know. I just...
No.
Yeah, so
That's very
to
fair.
take that position...
I will just say, like, on the flip side of that, I don't know if this is a smear campaign or what.
Sure.
I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on there. The fact that the Brutalist used AI, like none of the other Best Picture or nominees didn't, is silly to me, because I would say at least 50 to 60% of them did.
Yes, but
Now where you draw the line is interesting to me, because you have the voice effect aspect of it, and then you have the architecture, generative model aspect of it, and those are two very different things.
Go ahead.
Brady got interviewed about he claims that the architecture that you see in the movie, that none of that is AI generated, and he denied that. Now, if that's true, I don't know, but I thought that was interesting.
Well, the art isn't AI generated, but I think the
thing that has been claimed to be AI generated is the pictures of his artworks in the epilogue. That's the only thing that's been claimed to be AI generated. So
I didn't do the thumbs down.
So it's not like there's like still images of the actual like print that have been like AI generated and stuff. I think that's important. And I told you all this, like the killer used the AI voice stuff last year.
Yeah.
And no one knew about
I think
it.
that's fair. If the extent of it is the voice, I would listen to discussions about that. Nonetheless, the way that he's been posturing himself with
I think it's a really bad look.
It's terrible, because he's definitely taking a holier than thou approach. And so for it to flip on its head and say, well, we used a little bit of AI, and for him to be like, well, it's actually okay, because what are we we're fence sitting here. Are we purists or are we not?
Definitely, certainly. And the thing that, look, again, I'll say, like, if you think that AI was not used in the post-production of, Amelia Perez or Honora or any of these films, you're stupid, because it is. Okay, everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Or
Even to the extent of like
maybe not
RX,
everyone knows that, but it is.
Yeah.
Now again, the AI generated pictures at the end, that's a totally different story. That if that is true, that's not a good look.
No.
But I will say, it's a slippery slope, and I don't know where you draw the line, because everyone's like, oh, the voice stuff is okay, that's been used for a while, and everyone's using that. Well, you can read the article. There's claims of, well, if we didn't use this, we would have had to have paid more workers and had a longer post-production process.
That's crazy.
That's a dangerous thing you're getting into.
Yep.
Okay?
Especially,
and I don't think anyone is going to appreciate that.
Especially post-strike. That's pretty wild.
No, I know. That's why. But again, it's a lot easier to say, oh, we changed his voice or we used AI to take some noise out of the production sound than anything else, and people are going to be like, oh, that's fine. But again, that's a slippery slope because you're going to start losing jobs in post-production sound, which obviously no one cares about as much as like directing or screenwriting, which this is coming off the heels of Paul Schrader saying that AI could have written a screenplay better than almost all of the Oscar nominees this year.
Shout out Paul Schrader.
Incredibly interesting. Yeah. This is a guy that wrote maybe two of the best written films ever in Taxi Driver and Raging Bull. I don't know. Yeah, it's just a mess. I do want to say that I think I've seen a lot of people say that, this shouldn't be up for Oscar nominations or we should boycott this. If we're going to boycott anything that has AI in it, well, we're not going to be able to watch films in 10 years. Mm-hmm. That would be the thing that I would say to that because it's inevitable.
Boycotting
right?
on account of its use of AI is pretty ridiculous, I think. But I think we should critique it within the context of how it's, again, posturing itself. I think it should be
certainly
open to criticism for that. But at the same time, we need to acknowledge what the industry is doing. But this film is countercultural. It's against the grain. And so if it's going to be that, then, it needs to...
and it just feels silly. I'm not trying to sit here and defend the use of AI because I'm in this industry.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
That's the thing that scares me the most. Mm-hmm. In 10 years, are there going to be jobs? I just think that it's ignorant to think that this is the only film that's using AI.
Yeah.
But I will say the fact that this film did use AI is very funny, given the subject matter and the stances that Corbet has been on the press run.
Yeah. Agree with all that.
I think Brody, like, using AI to enhance his accent is
so strange.
I just don't that part has me like not trying to sound like too hyperbolic. I'm just shocked. Like I just don't.
No,
I do not understand. Like, how bad was his? Do we need that? Why do we need that?
He grew up speaking Hungarian.
Yeah, like. No,
how do you make that? How do you make an accent?
Look, the most interesting thing to me is in the short term is maybe Timothy was already going to win Best Actor. If he wins it now, we'll never know if he was going to win it or not, and if this had an effect on that. We'll never know. But we can assume that it would, because this is not a good look for Brody.
But it's also just like going back to the Adrian Brody thing. If his accent like wasn't quite up to snuff, who would have cared? Like, two people? Why do we feel the need to do that?
And even so, he's a native speaker. So like, what grounds do they have to be like, your accent isn't good enough?
When
that's absurd.
Yeah.
You speak the language.
And I do think that it's like I don't necessarily know the program or the plugin, whatever it is that they're using. I don't think it's like, I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, he said one word and this thing output like sentences and he didn't say any of that. I don't think it's that egregious, but I mean it's certainly a bad look, and it's confusing to me why he agreed to these terms, because again, post actor strike, these people have to agree to like do this AI stuff. So Adrian Brody signed something that said they can use this.
Yeah.
Make it make sense.
I don't know. I think just juxtaposing this to go back to Nickel Boys, Ramel Ross just handled his press tour with such grace and with just a really like kind spirit, and I don't know, he just seemed happy for like the film to get in front of people, and I don't know. So when I see what a director can be like, who made an excellent film, it just makes me, I'm like, this is not necessary.
It's interesting because 20 years ago, Ramel Ross was playing basketball at Georgetown.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago, Brady Corbet was in Hollywood acting. Mm-hmm. He was in this industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty reflective.
Yeah.
This industry can do things to you that are not good. I'm not saying that Corbet is not inherently like this and that Hollywood has changed him into this demon, but I just think that Ross is, I mean, he seems to be so much more of like a pure person.
Yeah.
And is grateful for everything.
Yeah, just a really kind
He's
spirit.
the new kid on
yeah.
the block.
Yeah.
He'll get it. He'll get
Yeah.
his. He'll get his
Hopefully
Doomer arc
he doesn't
eventually.
change. I'm not implying that he will change. But
You don't want to see me when I'm mad.
This movie's got so much baggage.
Yeah.
like
Seriously.
man,
it does. It's almost just. It's very interesting because I saw this a month ago before Corbet had done anything, before the Golden Globe speech, before the AI anything, and obviously, I said it's not perfect. I had problems with it, but it's stunning, and it's incredible that this got made. Okay.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
certainly below 10 million.
Oh yeah, that's incredible. I don't know.
But
how
yeah,
they-
I'd be lying if I said it doesn't feel a little bit tainted, or I can't view it in the same way now.
but also,
It just feels icky.
and I feel like it meanders too around the second act. It just kind of
No, I mean, yeah, it definitely does.
I'm
It's not. I'm not saying like without the AI stuff, this is a 10-star masterpiece. But I don't know. Yeah, it just yeah. It feels weird now,
yeah.
yeah.
and we'll see if I don't know. Maybe. But yeah, that's just the thing. If it's a 2-horse race between this and Amelia Perez for Best Picture, I know what I'm going with.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, if you think, well, Amelia Perez is like confirmed AI, and like not.
Yes, it used the same voice technology that Brody used.
Yeah. If we're gonna talk about like just egregious, egregious misrepresentation, and like be like, people like going back to earlier, people were claiming Zionism with the Brutalist, which I don't think is true. But then you have stuff like Amelia Perez, which is just like, what do you even say?
I don't even want to talk about Amelia Perez, to be honest with you.
I'm good.
That's fair.
It just kind of puts me to downer.
Yeah.
I watched it.
Because it's probably going to win at least 7 or 8 Oscars.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah, I did see that movie. That's all I'm gonna say.
It left him
That's all I'm gonna
speechless.
say.
That means it's amazing. We gotta watch it, man. It left you speechless.
I mean, like, I just had to see what the hubbub was about.
I mean, I'm gonna watch it soon. I'm kind of dreading it because it's like, ooh, do I watch this Demi film or Amelia Perez?
Yeah.
And that's why I haven't seen Amelia Perez yet, because that's an easy decision in my head.
And I want to say, I tried going into Amelia Perez with an open mind. I was like,
Sure.
I put my phone away. I sat down. It was a
Phone
nice.
away is crazy.
It was a nice Sunday afternoon. I was like, look, I'm really gonna give this a shot.
You roll out the red carpet for this movie.
I did.
It's wild.
I was like, let's see what's going on. Okay,
Bro got him a nice cup of coffee.
nice cup of coffee, fresh watch,
Yeah.
and it was just as bad as everybody said it was.
Did you like finish it like in one sitting?
Yes.
It's crazy.
Oh my god.
Yeah. It was a Monday afternoon, and I watched it from front to
I think
back.
that's worth applause, man. I gotta commend you for that. That's
maybe one pee break, but that was it. So.
nice. All right.
Yeah. Do we have any closing thoughts? I think we hit on this is.
No, I mean I think it'll be interesting to see what it does with the Oscars and if the AI stuff will have a effect on it, because I think everything that I've heard is Corbet is running ahead of Baker, but that
makes
might
sense.
fuck
Yeah.
out.
I found this episode very intellectually stimulating.
There we go. Thank you. Waiting on it. I'm glad you remembered. I would have forgotten.
Yeah.
I was waiting.
That I honestly did forget about like some of the funny parts of this, because it kind of has that like sly PTA humor
There were, we didn't really talk about that, but there actually were some pretty funny parts.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the intellectually stimulating line coming up like 4 or 5 times, I will say that was quite funny.
Yeah.
I liked that.
Good gag.
All right.
You got it.
Okay, roll that outro music.
Yeah.